Have you ever noticed how some people just seem to have this quiet control over everything around them? They don't raise their voice, don't beg, don't argue, they just pull back. And suddenly, everything feels different. The energy shifts, and people start to wonder, to follow, to feel. Now imagine if you did the same. What if instead of reacting immediately to every little thing, you chose silence? What if you stepped back rather than exploding? What do you think would happen? That's the real turning point. When you stop being constantly available, emotionally, physically, mentally, the world around you starts to feel off balance. People are used to steering you through your reactions, your impulses, your predictable behavior. But the moment you step away, everything changes. Those who thought they knew, you realize they actually don't. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves." Think about that. When you become unreachable, who really gets upset? Who tries to provoke you just to get a reaction? It says more about them than about you. Mostly, it shows how much you're still being pulled around without even noticing. You keep giving in to keep peace, to avoid losing people who, deep down, were never really there for you. Every forced yes, every quick reply, every emotional outburst drains your energy. And what's left in the end? Fatigue, frustration, an emptiness you can't quite explain. That's because you're too available to people who don't deserve even a moment of your quiet. This isn't about turning your back on everyone, it's about choosing yourself. Jung called it individuation, the process of becoming whole, authentic, and complete. And it starts when you realize that silence can be stronger than 1,000 arguments. When withdrawal is done with awareness, not avoidance, it becomes a powerful act. So, look at yourself now. How much longer will you let other people's emotions control you? How long will you keep reacting like a puppet every time someone touches a sore spot? Maybe it's time to cut those strings, to step back, to become a mystery. Because when you stop being available, everything changes. From childhood, you've been trained to always be there, to answer quickly, to say yes, even when you want to say no. You've been taught your value depends on how accessible you are. But here's a truth no one ever tells you clearly. Being too available is not a strength. It's a cage. As long as you think you have to be emotionally accessible all the time, you'll be manipulated, drained, and forgotten as soon as you stop being useful. Being predictable turns you into a tool for others, an emotional emergency button they push when they want attention or comfort, then set aside when they're done. You don't see this because you're caught in the illusion that being there for everyone means someone will be there for you, but that's not how it works. Jung talked about the persona, the mask we wear to be accepted and loved. That mask keeps you overly available. You say it's okay when you're suffocating, reply instantly when you're exhausted, justify yourself as if you owe the world something. But the truth is, the more you center your life around others, the more you disappear from yourself. Constant availability is a subtle kind of self-abandonment. It's a disguised way of seeking approval and avoiding rejection, and it costs you your peace, your energy, your sense of self. People who want you to always be available don't actually want you. They want what you give them: validation, company, distraction, emotional support. But when you set boundaries and stop reacting, they get irritated. They call you weird or accuse you of changing. It's not because you changed, they just lost the version of you that worked for them. Here's a harsh reality. The more available you are, the less you're valued. When something is too easy to get, it loses its worth. No one respects what they don't have to work for. So, who really deserves your time, your attention, your presence, or even better, who deserves your absence? Before you answer, let's ask, why do we react so much? Why do we give in so easily? Why the urge to respond, explain, please without thinking? Jung said it's about psychic energy. Our mind is an energy system where every thought, feeling, and action uses up some of that energy. The question is, are you deciding where your energy goes, or is the world deciding for you? Every impulsive reaction wastes your energy. Defending yourself against undeserved criticism, responding to provocation, engaging in pointless arguments, trying to please those who don't value you. Jung also said that what you resist persists. The more you react, the more you tie yourself down. People who are emotionally drained aren't weak, they're misdirected, And when you're exhausted, you become vulnerable. Easy prey for manipulative and needy people who sense your lack of boundaries. A healthy mind knows how to keep energy inside. That means learning to say no without guilt, to stay silent without feeling weak, to watch and wait before acting. True power isn't in reacting. It's in choosing when and how to act. That only happens when you know yourself well enough to recognize your impulses. How many nights have you lost sleep over a conversation that's still unresolved? How many times have you replayed something you should have said or tried to understand why someone hurt you? That's energy slipping away with no return. You're feeding ghosts that should be dead and keeping toxic cycles alive just by responding. Psychic energy is like a force field. When guarded well, it creates presence. You walk into a room and command respect without saying a word. When mismanaged, you become reactive, fragile, and invisible. The world doesn't cut slack for those who give in too easily. Start noticing your triggers. What makes you lose your calm? Those moments are where your energy escapes. The goal isn't to become cold or indifferent, but to be selective, to reclaim your power over yourself. One of Jung's key ideas: when you save your energy, you break the projections others place on you. That scares people because it means you're no longer their emotional puppet. Next, we'll dig into how opportunists feed off your energy and why being unavailable completely disrupts their games. Get ready to see clearly who's been draining you without your knowing. You think you're in control of your reactions, but many are automatic. People who understand this exploit it effortlessly. They don't need to yell or threaten, they just push your buttons and watch you respond. Jung called this projection, the way people see in others what they refuse to see in themselves. But here's the twist: the more emotionally available you are, the more you become a canvas for those projections. Think about that friend who only calls when they need something, or the partner who always wants you to save the day, or the person who praises you only when it benefits them. None of that is about who you really are. It's about the role you've allowed yourself to play. Why do you agree to it? Often because you're afraid of disappointing, of not being loved, of being abandoned. The most effective manipulation doesn't come with shouting. It comes in the silence of guilt, when you feel like you owe someone, when you believe you must always be available, even if it hurts you inside. Here's the crux: manipulators don't need to control you. They just need you to keep reacting the same way. But when you stop responding, when you say no, when you answer with silence, the game breaks down. Their projections fall apart. People get unsettled because they no longer know who you are, and worse, they're forced to face themselves, which most aren't ready for. Your unavailability threatens them because it shines a light on their own emptiness. Your silence exposes the noise they don't want to hear. Then come the attacks, the criticism, the drama. Not because you're wrong, but because you stopped being their convenient mirror. Jung said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. When you withdraw, the shadows of others emerge, and that's unbearable for those who used you as an escape." But what about you? Are you ready to face being misunderstood, rejected, or even attacked for protecting yourself? Are you ready to sit with the silence that follows the break? Because it's in that silence that a new kind of power grows, and that's what we'll talk about next. The modern world is loud. Everyone wants to be heard, to respond fast, to win arguments, even at the cost of their own peace. But there's a power few know, and fewer master: the power of silence. Not the silence of giving up or fear, but the silence of clarity, strategy, and deep presence. Jung saw silence as fertile ground for inner change. When you stop reacting, you start observing. And observation reveals patterns, repetitive emotions, manipulation, self-sabotage cycles. Silence brings clarity, and clarity threatens those who want to control you. Have you noticed how some people panic when you don't respond, when you don't explain yourself, when you just disappear? It's not because they miss you, it's because you've taken away their control of the story. While you talk, you're still in the game, but when you're silent, you change the rules. And that unsettles anyone who feeds off your reactions. True silence isn't the absence of voice. It's mastery over your energy. It's refusing to be dragged into pointless battles. Jung said individuation Becoming who you really are requires this distance. Only in silence can you hear yourself clearly without outside noise. But silence isn't free. It pushes away people who only liked the role you played. It makes you seem cold or distant to those who only saw you through their own needs. That's the hard truth. As you grow, you become more selective with your words because you know every word costs energy. Not everyone deserves your truth. Sometimes silence isn't retreat. It's sovereignty. It's the language of those who don't need to prove anything anymore. Silence can be uncomfortable because it forces others to face themselves, and that discomfort tells you more about them than any argument ever could. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your absence. It explains itself. Those who feel threatened by it only show how much they depended on your imbalance to keep control. The most powerful silence doesn't just disturb others, it rebuilds you from the inside. It reconnects you with something beyond approval or demand. This is what we'll cover next: how to consciously protect your energy, how to choose where it goes, and where it never should be wasted. It's time to learn to be selective with your soul. Understanding all this isn't enough if you keep saying yes when you mean no, responding to messages that drain you, or staying in empty relationships. Awareness without action is just another kind of self-deception. Real change starts when you decide to be selective. It takes emotional discipline. Conscious unavailability isn't about being cold or arrogant, it's about not being accessible to everyone all the time for every demand. It's about taking control of your energy, your time, your peace. And that starts with small choices. Not answering right away, pausing before reacting, leaving a toxic conversation, turning off your phone without guilt, saying no without explaining. And here's the most important part: you don't owe anyone your silence or your presence. You owe it to yourself. For many, this is hard to accept. Refusing to explain yourself takes power away from others who rely on your emotional availability to keep you in their story. Jung understood that becoming who you truly are involves isolation, not as punishment, but as a sacred retreat to listen to yourself without outside noise. Want to check your growth? Notice who pulls away when you become more reserved, who tries to provoke you when you stop reacting, who says you've changed when you start protecting yourself. These aren't signs you're wrong, they're signs you're freeing yourself. Being unavailable feels uncomfortable at first. You'll feel guilty, selfish, maybe hear you're too harsh, but that's normal. You've been trained to put yourself last. Change will be uncomfortable, for you and for those who benefited from your old self. Conscious unavailability is the foundation of self-determination. Saying no to the world means saying yes to yourself. Walking away from toxic spaces means your peace matters more than any fake connection. And when you stop explaining yourself, you gain respect, even if from only a few. But not everyone is ready for this kind of presence. Your absence exposes wounds they don't want to face and shows how much they needed your emotional chaos to feel in control. That's when the rupture happens. And with it, loneliness, pain, the feeling of losing something. But really, you're just freeing yourself. What comes after that? What grows from this silence? In the last part, we'll explore the rebirth that happens when you have the courage to be misunderstood, to be alone, and to become whole on your own. Because the loneliness of the strong is the path to true freedom. When you stop being available to everyone, something profound starts. First, there's silence, an uncomfortable, screaming silence inside that makes you question if you did the right thing, if you're too harsh, if you're losing people who liked you. But slowly, that silence changes. It cleanses. It calms. It heals. Then comes solitude, not absence, but full presence with yourself. The solitude of strength. The solitude of someone who no longer betrays themselves to keep others close. In that space, confusion turns into clarity. Anxiety turns into peace. Neediness turns into a new kind of strength, the strength of being whole within yourself. Jung said, individuation means distancing yourself from the crowd, dropping the mask, and walking alone for a time. And that's exactly what you do when you choose unavailability. You're not running from the world, you're returning to yourself. At this point, you stop reacting and start creating. You stop being shaped by circumstances and begin shaping your reality from within. People who don't like your absence reveal they never wanted you. They only wanted the role you played. Now that you've changed, they don't know what to do with you, and that's freedom. You'll lose some people, but find yourself. You'll leave places but reconnect with your core. You'll be misunderstood but finally respected. Because when you're no longer available for emotional scraps, mind games, or empty connections, you become valuable, rare, unforgettable. This is a new beginning. A life where you only accept what aligns with your peace, your truth, your wholeness. Now, let's talk about something Jung is really known for. The idea of the shadow. Simply put, the shadow is the part of ourselves we don't usually see or admit to. It's made up of thoughts, feelings, and impulses that we might find uncomfortable, shameful, or just don't want to face. When you stop being available all the time, when you pull back from constantly responding to others or trying to keep everyone happy, you give yourself space to face this shadow. Why? Because when you're always on for others, you don't have time or energy left to look inward. The shadow stays hidden because you're distracted or busy managing other people's expectations. But as soon as you create that space by setting boundaries or stepping back, those hidden parts start to surface. You might notice feelings of guilt, fear, anger, or loneliness coming up. These feelings are often linked to the shadow. Jung believed that confronting these parts of yourself is essential for true growth. Shadow work is about recognizing and accepting these parts instead of pushing them away. It's uncomfortable, sure, but it helps you understand why you behave a certain way, why you might overextend yourself, or why you fear being alone or rejected. And here's the key. When you face your shadow, you break free from unconscious patterns. You stop reacting out of fear or habit and start making choices that are more aligned with who you really are. So, stopping your constant availability isn't just about saying no to others, it's about saying yes to yourself, including the parts you've been avoiding. It's a tough process, but it's where real transformation happens. So, how do you put all this into action? How do you actually start stopping your constant availability without causing chaos or hurting relationships? First, start small. You don't have to go completely off the grid or cut people off. Try setting simple boundaries, like not responding immediately to every message or saying no when you're really busy or drained. It's okay to prioritize your own needs. Next, be honest with people about what you're doing. You don't need to give a long explanation, but a simple, "I'm taking some time to focus on myself right now," can go a long way. People tend to respect honesty, even if it takes some getting used to. Also, pay attention to how you feel during this process. It's normal to feel uncomfortable or even guilty at first. After all, you're breaking old habits. But that discomfort is actually a sign that you're growing. When those feelings come up, remind yourself why you're doing this, to create space for your own well-being and growth. Finally, remember that this isn't about shutting others out completely. It's about balance, being available when you want to be, but also protecting your energy when you need to. Over time, this will help you build healthier relationships where your needs matter just as much as anyone else's. If you've made it this far, it means a part of you is already ready for this journey. A part of you knows that being loved means nothing if you lose yourself. That true self-love starts when you choose yourself, even if it means being alone for a while. Now, tell me in the comments, are you ready to be misunderstood, rejected, or even hated for the sake of your inner freedom? Are you ready to pay the price of being truly you? If this message resonates, type, "I choose my peace." Let's see who's ready for this change.